Kimmy hasn't really shown any reaction I'd consider particularly meaningful since my last release. I mean, all the Twitch streams she did since my last release, they weren't anything I needed or that at all appeased me or forced me to shut up or change my position at all. All watching them did was waste my time and energy and add stress in my life that I never wanted or needed or benefit from at all. Kimmy's probably left with quite some anxiety over what I'm thinking and feeling and planning to do next. I certainly don't owe it to her or anyone else to even slightly alleviate that negative state. She, and probably at least to some extent also others, are left in as a result of her own extremely damaging attitudes and behaviors towards me she's had since the very beginning of our connection that she continues to act upon to this day. And the way she's been acting, I'll openly admit without hesitation that I genuinely hope and will do everything in my power to guarantee things only get worse for her, as they should, if she continues. Kimmy probably should be feeling much worse than she actually does right now. She probably still has multiple people in her life extremely stupidly continuing to stroke her ego and giving her an extremely delusional sense of comfort and continuing to treat me how she is. And of course, all of those people are also operating entirely against my consent, wishes, and best interests. But I'm still not benefiting at all in any real way or any way I've been after from everything good I've done, and I most certainly wasn't doing everything to end up just tormenting people and leaving them confused, nor out of any desire or willingness to be left ending up feeling tormented or confused about anything or in any kind of state I consider undesirable myself. I just know that if torment and confusion is the energy others try to project onto me, and they're hallucinating I have to take it, they're extremely severely mistaken. So since I mentioned the conspiracy to murder me that Celine and Janet have definitely been involved in with Kimmy, and ultimately likely several others as well overall, I decided to briefly check in a bit on what kind of energy these two other women I've become increasingly aware of the active significant participation in such of were giving out after my last release. Taking a look at Janet.
Sorry, you zoomed. One's there.
Have to sneeze. And I yawned? Okay, body. So weird. Okay.
What'd you say?
After this one's keep.
I certainly wouldn't always read into someone's behavior like this, and something like this could also always be faked quite easily too. But the feeling I had is it's genuine, so I'll just go with that and address it like it's genuine. To me, within just a few minutes of watching Janet's first live stream after my last release, I can see Janet seems clearly considerably spiritually disturbed that the setup she was involved in conspiring against me with through Grand Theft Auto role-playing on NoPixel has failed miserably and is now being exposed publicly by me. She can't even interpret her body's signals correctly, interpreting a sneeze coming and then yawning instead. This is the first time I've ever seen something like that in my entire life. Seems she really thought I'm speaking badly of her behind the scenes or want some kind of romantic and or sexual connection with her or something that justifies her behavior towards me and involvement in trying to destroy my life. But now, she's coming to realize she's been getting manipulated extremely badly and used by others to push their own agendas. So my spiritual protection is starting to really show now. It's about time. I certainly wouldn't go as far as to say Janet feels sorry or that she wasn't at all knowingly benefiting somehow at my expense intentionally, because she's clearly not really sorry at all, nor is it likely she wasn't significantly benefiting somehow at my expense intentionally. But even she herself seems angry at herself and how she's becoming aware she's out of touch with her spiritual state after treating me how she has. It's only going to get worse for her and anyone else involved in doing things like this to me with how I'm being treated, but I suppose she's still choosing to desperately hold on to living in massive denial for as long as she thinks she can. She clearly has experienced traumas she hasn't properly dealt with in her life, which leads to weaknesses in her personality through active ego she likely fails to properly recognize. Her catchphrase, or whatever you want to call it, of, "If you're happy, I'm happy," seems to be indicative of rather severe people-pleasing tendencies Janet has. Kimmy and Celine clearly can see those weaknesses and took advantage, among others. Janet needs therapy, but then again, so do probably many other people Kimmy associates with. What a surprise. Not. Because I'm not a fraud when I talk about my core value of refined pure bidirectional apprehension, the kind and extent of genuinely strong and positive qualities in my personality means I'm really not blindly trying to become a bully, even to people who have done horrible things to me. My lack of seeing clear relevancy to Janet's involvement for a very long time likely is at least somewhat indicative of the extent of her conscious awareness of exactly how horrible what she was facilitating me being put through really is. So let's say I give Janet the benefit of the doubt and believe she genuinely was a lot less aware of what she was really doing than she really should have required herself to be before entering into some serious kind of ordeal, literally trying to sacrifice someone's life in real life. So she's an idiot, which is bad, and especially so because an idiot with fame is a powerful and therefore dangerous idiot, prone to doing especially stupid things like Janet has in how she's chosen to deal with me. But I guess it's still not as bad as doing what she was doing, more or less fully knowing just how horrible it really is. I don't really follow her or know much about her, but I don't really feel like I need to try to understand very much more than the fact that she was clearly involved to a very much non-trivial extent in facilitating the infliction of the hellish nightmare upon my life that has been inflicted on me for a very long time and still is to this day. With Celine, I think this kind of summarizes the vibe she's going for in regards to this situation right now.
I don't know. I don't know what's happening, if I'm honest.
Disappointing but unsurprising. I'd say this in fact shows really how serious Celine's involvement in and awareness of what she's been doing to me really is. If you're watching the video of this podcast and actually paid attention to the clip I just showed, you'll notice the crying cat picture Celine positioned as if to be used to cover the room code for the Among Us lobby she was in, which, if you watched other parts of that stream, you'd know doesn't even need covering because it's hidden through an in-game feature. I've briefly checked in on her streams a bit here and there at certain points enough to know that this certainly isn't the first time she's used that picture on a live stream of hers. Specifically, she seems to be especially prone to using it at points I'm either especially resistant to engaging with her romantically and or sexually somehow myself, or especially resistant to her engaging romantically and or sexually somehow with Kimmy. So at this point, it seems to me that it has some kind of deeper meaning behind the scenes, which I'm pretty sure I can reasonably accurately just take a guess about at this point. I'm not sure if this relates to some kind of lie that I'm Kimmy or being controlled by Kimmy or forced to appease Kimmy or want to or benefit in some way from some ulterior motive I'm being somehow misrepresented, claiming I'm after. As if Celine publicly underhandedly expressing sadness or anger or something about my position matters to me or should matter to me or for whatever reason should or can influence my position at all. But it seems Celine's doing this weird thing like she's, for one reason or another, deviously underhandedly throwing a tantrum or something about me being who I am and having the feelings and position I'm taking in regards to this whole thing. This is a direct, extremely aggressive spiritual attack against me at this point, so I should make sure I address it adequately clearly and officially publicly stating that I don't care. I really don't care. I never did, and I never will. It doesn't influence me to change my position in the slightest. It never did, and it never will. Nor should it. Not only is this an extremely deviously abusive reaction, but it's also just generally extremely immature, petty, and pathetic, even if it's somehow genuinely being done with good intentions towards everyone involved. Not that I'm particularly compelled to believe it is in the first place. In fact, I'm much more inclined to believe it's fully consciously and intentionally being done with immense malice towards me. I don't really follow Celine or know much about her either, but from the little I do know about her, I know Celine has publicly shared before a story about how she has childhood trauma with a man sexually violating her when she was underage. Since this was such a prominent thing that it reached the point she ended up sharing that story publicly as my approach to confronting the escalating level of existential assault all the toxicity I've had to deal with over time was inflicting upon me as Celine's involvement in it became increasingly apparent and aggressive in the past. Not only does Celine also have unresolved issues and a massive ego, but I'd say it's most likely that Celine's issues are much more serious and her ego much more massive than Janet's. Especially given there's clearly been some kind of romantic and likely even sexual involvement between Celine and Kimmy, I'm definitely not comfortable so casually just brushing it off like I did with Janet. Based on the type of trauma and the fact that it reached the point it became public knowledge with no clearly compelling reason for Celine to put it out there really ever presented from what I can tell, I'd say it's fair to say it makes sense to believe she's deviously underhandedly been using it to somehow justify the perpetuation of extremely serious false narratives about me that facilitate her being inherently discriminatory towards me because she has a general victim mindset and deep down believes something along the lines of men all want to abusively take advantage of her. I'm just gonna say it like I see it. Pretty sure she just sees me as a man and doesn't really care that I identify female. She probably sees my identity as an intentional insult to hurt her, or as some kind of power play in this conflict, if not some roleplay thing or just a complete joke, because she doesn't want to face the reality that those things are simply completely false, and probably also because she'd naturally feel jealous and threatened in regards to whatever she's had going on with Kimmy behind the scenes, if not also in other areas of her life. From my perspective, Celine's playing dumb here and acting confused like she doesn't know what's really going on because she doesn't want to face herself and how massive and unhealthy her ego clearly is, especially when it comes to someone like me. But I don't, never have, and never will want or have to live to satisfy Celine's extremely unhealthy obsession with emotional comfort she craves to stay in her ego. So her attempts to avoid really confronting it aren't going to allow her to avoid facing it forever, no matter how much she might wish it could. In my admittedly rather limited exposure to her, I can say I've definitely seen some behaviors I'd classify as misandristic. I'd say Celine sees abusing men into submission through extremely exploitative manipulation as respect she demands them to always show her or allow her to force on them. Based on my read of Celine's energy, it seems she believes I haven't always in reality shown respect towards her and or Kimmy and or other women, as if my romantic and sexual feelings towards Kimmy somehow stem from or are facilitated by a place of disrespect or some kind of negative quality within me. I feel like Celine really seriously feels like I need some kind of humbling to learn always to show respect to women, or perhaps even people in general. And she uses my pursuit of Kimmy and how I went about dealing with Kimmy's extreme toxicity at certain points in time as justification for it. Probably in no small part due to Kimmy herself fully consciously and intentionally misrepresenting the reality of how I treated her to Celine, so I'd be pushed into situations that were really easy for Kimmy to manipulate to make seem like validation of her false narratives about me, to take advantage of this weakness in Celine that Kimmy obviously would have seen. But while I'm not on any kind of good terms with Celine, nor am I particularly trying to become on any kind of good terms with her at all, I don't want to start going off personally attacking Celine either, since this was never some kind of personal vendetta against Celine, nor was it some strange overcompensation or disingenuous pursuit of Celine by me. Celine was the one that made it personal from my perspective. You know, by seriously conspiring to destroy and end my life in real life and abuse that to try to secure a serious romantic relationship with someone I've always had genuine, extremely strong feelings for. And even still, I've overall always still been really respectful and graceful in how I've dealt with Celine's, in reality, extremely toxic attitude and behavior towards me. I've already explained why I don't find it necessary or appropriate to go off a bunch on Janet, and I'd prefer not to go down to some weak, pathetic hater energy for any reason. so I won't focus too much on Celine either. At the end of the day, I don't really have a personal connection with Celine, and I largely can only really speculate on just how much her behavior was driven by intentional malice from misplaced emotions resulting from emotional dysregulation built up through mishandling her unhealed traumas, versus Kimmy feeding her lies about me that abused her pure intentions to simply be a good person and protect her friend she would have genuinely perceived needs protection from someone being portrayed to her as an extremely malicious bad faith actor. I've already went in on this podcast in regards to talking about my biological relatives and people I used to know in the past from many in-person interactions. But especially since it seems there's most likely quite serious lies going around about me that make it seem like I've been initially disrespectful to Kimmy or others on Twitch, which she'd obviously use to attempt to justify how she's treated me since, I should probably talk about how my connection with Kimmy started and also how I've dealt with the Twitch community as a whole. To put it simply, I started off my connection with Kimmy by trying to keep things lighthearted and warm. That's how I dealt with everyone. Friendly enough, but emotionally distant and just overall trying to stay out of trouble while still bringing good vibes. Never gossiping about anyone. Although with Kimmy, she seemed to be willing and desiring of taking our connection more seriously on a romantic level, and I wanted to as well. So I quite quickly started taking it a lot more seriously than anyone else I ever spoke to that I've ever in any manner initially encountered from the Twitch platform. I still never gossiped about anyone or did anything trying to cause trouble or bring anyone down. I just put an increasing amount of time and energy into my connection with her, attending all of her live streams, actively participating in her Twitch chat, and I opened up to her emotionally more in Discord DMs as more time passed and she showed more seeming interest in getting to grow closer to me. I never actually disrespected Kimmy, but from the beginning, she was shady and chaotic and never tried to actually clarify things or communicate at all healthily or express her wants or needs at all properly, which I imagine she might be misrepresenting as me disrespecting her somehow at some point in time. The reality is, I took initiative to start conversations with her many times with pure and good intentions towards her, and really tried to make her feel comfortable and invite her to speak her mind respectfully. But she tended to be quite distant, and I guess she'd probably say she kept it professional. But really, she kept it extremely confusing and far from how an actually respectable professional in any line of work ever would act towards someone they were trying to have a truly platonic connection with. And from how she's acted since, she's proven it was always clearly very much intentionally so. I'm aware that Kimmy actually attended 2 Toronto meetups around the time I met her in the one I attended. Previously, only like 2 months beforehand, Kimmy had attended a meetup in Toronto where both Jamie, known as iGumdrop, and Leslie, known as Foosley, also attended. I didn't attend that one. I wasn't looking out for meetups in general with anyone, even after I started engaging with Kimmy's Twitch streams regularly. But beforehand, I was so heavily focused on my personal growth, both in my game development endeavors as well as my mental health and understanding of the world, that I never even checked anyone's social media. I had accounts on platforms, but never really used them at all. I also rarely participated in engaging in anyone's live streams across all of Twitch at that point in time, so I simply wasn't even paying attention when the first Toronto meetup Kimmy attended with Jamie and Leslie happened. It was literally just a coincidence that I ended up having progressed on working on myself to the point of deciding to look around the internet more and start engaging with Kimmy not very long after she attended the first Toronto meetup she was a part of. I suppose I would have attended that meetup if I'd been paying attention to things like that earlier, but I feel like it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things anyways, because in the end, I would have been attending solely to meet Kimmy anyways, just like I did in the meetup I did attend. If anything, I feel like it worked out better for me how things happened, because less public figures present means less fans present, which means a more personal experience between me and Kimmy. I don't know who exactly came to the first Toronto meetup or what compelled it to happen, or really much of anything else about it either. I had absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with it, and I didn't even learn it happened until weeks after it was already over. In the meetup I did attend, I didn't know any of the people there beforehand. Technically, there was one random person I happened to spend a bit of time with before the meetup because they were from out of the country and asked if anyone wanted to hang out for a bit before the meetup. But the first I'd ever spoken to him in my life was in regards to the meetup in Jamie's Discord channel for it, and that meetup day was the first time I'd ever met him in person. I haven't spoken to him since and don't have any reason to that I'd consider compelling. I mean, it's not like he came off like a bad person or anything, he just wasn't really particularly interesting either. And the only reason I ever even bothered with Jamie's Discord channel for the meetup in the first place was because Kimmy's Discord server didn't have a channel for it. I've never attended any meetups for any Twitch streamer, YouTuber, or otherwise content creator or public figure of any kind or capacity, aside from that one Toronto meetup with Kimmy and Jamie. I don't have, and have never had, any want or need to either. I've never met Leslie in my life, and I have no particular want or need to. I've only ever spoken to Leslie in the past because I genuinely wanted to speak to Kimmy, but Kimmy's direct messages on Discord were closed to the public at that point. The messages I sent Leslie were messages I explicitly told her were intended to be passed along to Kimmy, and I was only sending to Leslie because Kimmy closed her own direct messages, but Leslie's were still open. Kimmy and Leslie were roommates at the time, so it seemed like the best possible way for me to try to communicate with Kimmy at the time, since I felt it would be more of a personal approach than contacting her management. I wanted to make it extremely clear I was never after some exclusively professional connection with Kimmy. After seeing how everything has played out, in retrospect, maybe I should have just contacted Kimmy's management and started exposing how she treated me, since she was already acting extremely shady at that point and like she was just trying to use me all along. But I genuinely wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt and show her how much I really care about her and our connection before deciding on handling it in a manner that could have easily misrepresented my genuine feelings and intentions I had all along. I've spoken to both Kimmy and Jamie privately in Discord DMs. I've only spoken to Jamie a couple times, and I was always polite and respectful to her. I kept it just friendly and didn't even really flirt with her, even though I could tell she was being flirty with me and seemed to be interested in a romantic relationship with me. It wasn't me being shy. I was trying my best to gently but firmly make it very clear I'm not, never have been, and never will be interested in pursuing a romantic or sexual connection of any capacity with her. To this day, she's never even once reached out to me to initiate communication for any reason, so it was pretty easy to just keep my distance. I've talked privately with Kimmy more than I've talked to anyone else on all of Twitch privately, much more. It was all exclusively through Discord DMs. With Kimmy, we talked several times and I felt a bit pushy a couple times, but she was always quite playfully responsive overall, and I'm sure she realized that she was pushing boundaries if she was going to treat me publicly how she was, and yet expected nothing privately when we clearly had a personal connection. So if she's even going to try to say I disrespected her, then she disrespected me first by assuming she could treat me however she wants, and try to imply things or lead me on however she wanted, and expect me to just have to shut up and let her break my heart or mess around with false narratives about me as she's blatantly gossiping to her friends as if I didn't like her that much or something and I had to just shut up and let her. After reflecting considerably on things and looking at how everything's turned out at this point, I see what I'd consider quite strong evidence to suggest that there's also some kind of unhinged contract or pact or deal or arrangement of some kind between Kimmy, Jamie, and Leslie to conspire to murder me, with Jamie likely playing a role similar to what Celine did, and Leslie likely playing a role similar to what Janet did. However, because I met Jamie in real life in that meetup many years ago, and I've personally contacted Leslie with those messages to pass on to Kimmy early on, it seems it was much more deviously set up and able to be hidden from me for much longer. One major difference, though, is I'd say Jamie and Leslie are both much more well aware of just how horrible what they've been doing really is compared to Celine and Janet. I imagine the Celine and Janet thing was basically layered on top of false narratives already long established through Jamie and Leslie's extreme abuse towards me. Imagine, as if one extremely serious conspiracy to murder me wasn't enough, These unhinged maniacs needed to layer them on top of each other. Unbelievable. Meeting Jamie in real life seems to have somehow enabled her to try to make false narratives about me hold much more weight than they should, so that's why she was able to do something like what Celine did, but without even being Korean, much less having a body anywhere even close to looking like Kimmy's. The messages I sent Leslie in the past to forward to Kimmy are probably being massively misrepresented, as if to suggest I've ever had interest in or wanted or attempted to pursue some kind of romantic and or sexual relationship with Leslie, or simply was trying to cause chaos and confusion through her, which she's probably been abusing extremely badly to stir chaos and confusion among the lies Jamie was already purporting through extremely badly abusing having met me in person. Jamie, Leslie, Celine, Janet, all of these women, I am not, never have been, and never will be at all pursuing or willing to tolerate any kind of romantic and or sexual relationship with. Absolutely, unconditionally. If I saw any real evidence to suggest there are any other serious conspiracies to murder me with weird, chaos-inducing triangles of lying psychopaths extremely badly abusing my feelings for Kimmy, I would have also called those out on this podcast already too. But I'm not going to start making loosely reasoned guesses and make my claims in situations with a lot of solid reason seem like some kind of joke. From the beginning, Kimmy was confusing and fake in how she dealt with me. The first thing I told her privately, days before the meetup, was simply that if she had any questions for me or anything she wanted to talk about, I was open to talking. She never replied. After the meetup, I sent her paragraphs opening up to her about having feelings for her and wanting to have a really serious relationship with her, and told her I treated her how I did at the meetup because I really care about her and wanted to have a meaningful conversation with her instead of just flirting with her or having shallow small talk. She didn't reply, but she went on stream the next day and had the first ever sit down and talk stream I saw her do. She literally talked for over 4 hours straight on what she looks for in a partner and her perspective on relationships. This was extremely strange for someone that normally just turned on her stream and started playing League of Legends. I was never all that attached to League of Legends anyways, so it was a change I welcomed with open arms. I knew it couldn't be a coincidence, so I tried having a talk with her about it privately. But she denied seeing my previous message and claimed that she just saw Leslie talking about it, so she felt like talking about it too. Or something like that. Ridiculous. I never spoke to or about Leslie at all at that point. So I assumed it was just because they were roommates. Me and Kimmy had a lengthy discussion and I made it extremely clear that I'm extremely serious about my feelings for her. But although she gently rejected me on the surface, it was an extremely strange rejection, and she, for some reason, expressed to me that it was a depressing conversation for her, even though I was the one getting rejected. It was the strangest rejection by far I ever had, and it really came off like Kimmy didn't even actually want to reject me, but there was some other reason she was holding back. She was really hot and cold about things constantly from then onwards. Extremely mixed signals, and there's no way she didn't realize how horrid her notion of boundaries actually was demonstrably proven by her to be when it came to our connection. It reached a point where she was so receptive to private communication with me and indulging in playful conversations with me about my romantic feelings for her that I knew I needed to draw some kind of boundary. I thought I could do it by changing my Twitch username from Shattered Wings Dev to Angel Shattered Wings and then making Kimmy, ban me from her channel or at least tell me she seriously doesn't want to date me or something. But instead, she just let it happen like it was perfectly fine. When I tried to bring it up to her privately, she acted so nonchalant about it and cool with it like she enjoyed it and wanted me to take things more seriously. But she never made me feel comfortable actually treating her like we're dating, and I never did. Not because I wasn't serious, but because I didn't want to come off pushy or creepy or toxic somehow. The whole situation felt really weird to me, and I felt really unclear on Kimmy's actual feelings for me. She never communicated properly, and she was clearly really dishonest. I really didn't know where we stood, and I didn't want to act out of touch, but she constantly made things increasingly difficult for me. It reached the point where she was being extremely hurtful and acting exceedingly strange and doing things like subscriber speed dating, which made me feel extremely uncomfortable to even consider engaging with at all after how weird she was acting. I didn't even know what to make of the situation, but I just knew I felt increasingly like I didn't belong there and didn't want to continue to invest my time and energy into someone that was draining it and only giving me pain and chaos and confusion that they clearly should have known I didn't want, need, or deserve in my life. So I initially very respectfully privately messaged her and told her that she was being extremely confusing and hurtful, and I definitely cannot tolerate being only friends with her, especially not with how she was treating me. But I can see she clearly doesn't seem to want or feel comfortable being mature or reasonable in communicating feelings towards me honestly or fairly, so I was just going to distance myself from her since I felt deeply unsettled by how she treated me and I wasn't enjoying it or benefiting from it in any way, and I had my own goals in life to achieve greatness and decided I should focus on those. I voluntarily left her alone, respectfully, with giving her an opportunity to communicate to keep me around if she really cared, and with warning. I didn't start drama or try to strong-arm her into benefiting me in any manner. And I even kept my distance from all of the Twitch platform as a whole, naturally including all of her friends or otherwise associates, so I wasn't even bothering anyone else as if to be taking jabs at Kimmy behind her back or something. I never gossiped about anyone, anywhere. I was literally just staying in my own lane and doing game development in silence while I felt heartbroken and devastated at how Kimmy had treated me. I was crying myself to sleep at night and never let anyone find out, even my blood relatives who were still in my life at the time. Kimmy literally had a mental breakdown in public, live on stream, in front of hundreds of people, saying she needed motivational videos to get out of bed in the morning within literally less than 2 months. And she's had multiple existential crises and other kinds of mental breakdowns over me, constantly trying to leave her alone since. In the many times I've offered or tried when she seemed like she just felt I was a pest and wished I left. But somehow I was always turned into the problem and my professional prospects put into extremely severe jeopardy through what was becoming increasingly apparent was false narratives being spread about me somehow. I was never actually disrespectful to anyone on the entire Twitch platform, publicly or privately, before or after attending that one meetup I attended. And I'm not just talking about interactions with them actually on the platform itself, although that's certainly included in the total scope of the assertion. I always just tried to keep things lighthearted and fun, or sensitively emotionally aware to situations, and overall kept my emotional distance from people respectfully. I occasionally tried to inquire about people's mental frameworks or perhaps give advice, but if I saw the person was resistant to it or deemed it inappropriate for whatever reason, I immediately backed off and made a note of it to refrain from such rhetoric with them so as not to come off forceful or out of touch. I'd say I was overall quite distant with everyone, and typically my presence was well received. Nobody ever felt compelled to ban me from their chat, if that's any indication. Well, at least until Kimmy's toxicity towards me escalated to the point I had to make a public confrontation towards her over her ridiculous attitude of literally having a mental breakdown in public over my distance and absence from her life after she pushed me away. But then blatantly, fully consciously, and intentionally refused to communicate with me properly over it. At which point, she proceeded to act like I was always the problem and banned me from all her stuff. And then the hellish nightmare she made my life really began. I've never cheated on anyone in my life. I've literally never even been in an actual relationship before to even have had an opportunity to cheat in the first place. And I have no concerns about even just being tempted if I was in a relationship. If anything, the way Kimmy treated me was cheating type behavior far more than anything I've ever done in my life. I was actually already trying to move on from the pieces of garbage from my past when I first met Kimmy. I've always been extremely genuine and certain about my feelings for Kimmy. I didn't even think of anyone from my past stalking me and trying to sabotage my connection with Kimmy behind my back, and Kimmy never even once informed me or even really hinted to me of anyone doing so at all either. She just treated me so badly that I ended up getting suspicious of it and ultimately ended up feeling the need to address it somehow. Again, very early on after high school ended for me, I simply cut all the people I used to consider friends from high school out of my life and never spoke to them, and they never even tried speaking to me. And all my blood relatives I once called family were always very cold and mean to me overall, so I kept massive emotional distance from them even when they were actively in my life. I had no way of knowing if anyone was stalking me and trying to talk smack about me to Kimmy or others, and nobody ever communicated about it to me. Instead, they just took gossip other people said as fact about me, and it seems they took my lack of gossiping about others as some kind of passive admittance of guilt from me, or something. I was never desperately in need of keeping any of my blood relatives in my life, and I was always careful and hesitant even with giving them chances to stay. I wanted to put all the garbage people from my past behind me so badly that I didn't even mention anything about ever having had intimate feelings for anyone else to Kimmy or anyone else on Twitch for over 2 years, until the point Kimmy's toxicity and extreme abuse of me and my time and energy reached a point where I was so exceedingly disturbed and distressed and not being believed or respected by anyone about anything, while I was at the point of homelessness and eating out of trash cans back then already, that I wrote the initial public revision of my book I titled Why I'm Going to Single-Handedly Destroy the World, where during writing it, that's when for the first time I started sharing the nightmare of people from my past to Kimmy and others. It's not like I refrained for so long because I was trying to hide something I was ashamed of. It's extremely toxic people that are extremely unpleasant to be around or even know about, and I didn't want to bring that extremely negative energy into a connection I wanted to have warmth and pleasantness to, in an environment where I wanted to elevate myself and those I choose to surround myself with. It's not like I enjoy constantly having to expose or clarify heavy stuff that's unpleasant to remember and unpleasant to have to speak about. I was basically forced because of how brutal my life circumstances had become, to the point where I genuinely felt completely trapped and as if the whole world was against me and trying to destroy me, and like there was nothing I could do about it. It literally was that, or unaliving myself, with how much emotional dysregulation I was having inflicted on me constantly, and I would never unalive myself. So yes, I threatened to unalive those among the most emotionally dysregulating individuals that the various experiences in my life led me to believe were heavy contributors to the state I was left in. I'm not sorry either, nor will I ever be. I still believe they all deserved to hear it. Some of them deserve even much worse than just hearing it if they continue doing the kinds of things to me that they have. And yet, even when I proved that increasingly clearly, at the end of the day, I still ended up doing a 13.5-month sentence actually in jail, in real life, just for making threats over the internet, but they all remain effectively completely unpunished for their involvement in the multiple literal conspiracies to murder me in real life that led to me making those threats, while I'm left eating out of trash cans and sleeping on the streets for years and to this day, as people continue to deviously try to torment and abuse me to death with their lies and neglect extremely unjustly. That's this reeking dumpster fire society's idea of justice. After the first few months, where Kimmy was generally pretty pleasant to me and left me feeling like she genuinely wanted a romantic connection with me, her attitude and behavior started changing in that it seriously just started coming off increasingly blatantly, unapologetically toxic and malicious towards me. And ever since, for years, every day, I've been getting tormented trying to figure out what the hell is happening and why it seems like there are constantly massive, blatant lies being purported about me and my life in many regards. I've literally been having multiple mental breakdowns on the daily trying to figure out what to do for years. In the past, I simply could focus on the content Kimmy would create on her live streams or things she'd post on social media to get input to try to get indication of what lies were being purported next. But now it's reached the point I just have to reflect on things and look inward to try to figure out what's going on or what I should do. I find myself in an increasingly disturbing situation every passing day that I neither hear from Kimmy pursuing the relationship she should be pursuing with me, nor see any kind of real results with all the work I've put into this podcast in general to extremely thoroughly expose and destroy Kimmy's life if she refuses to treat me properly how I want and deserve to be treated by her in a timely manner. I don't get paid anything for doing this. I've never gotten paid anything for the years of effort I've put into pursuing Kimmy, whether financially or otherwise. I'm seriously not employed by anyone in any capacity. I haven't been at all in my entire life, except for like a couple months, years ago, where I was programming as a project lead for a startup. I quit because it was taking too much time out of my efforts pursuing Kimmy, and I really didn't care for the money so much. I seriously have absolutely no contracts with any manner of non-disclosure agreement or otherwise to do what I'm doing here. I've already completely honestly explained that whole thing in great detail on this podcast. I'm literally not getting any benefit from doing this as things are. Nothing. I'm just constantly defending myself from psychopath liars tormenting me. I'm trying to expose the truth clearly after people lied about me extremely badly for years, and Kimmy went to great lengths to constantly cripple me from being able to properly escalate into formal statements that would force people to take things more seriously and reveal to me why so many people believe so many false things about me. All the while, I'm forced to endure literally being homeless, sleeping on the street, eating out of trash cans, having no friends or lover or anyone I actually enjoy having in my life, and trying to figure out how I could work so hard for so long and be such an unbelievably basically angelic person overall to everyone I've ever been close to somehow, yet end up in such an unbelievably, extremely brutal, miserable existence as if I deserve punishment for it. Facing the prospect of now having to go and do a bunch of game development entirely on my own and build myself up from these remarkably brutal circumstances, only to finally pursue getting attention from my efforts on this podcast and make all my suffering pay off in a miserable way of having to destroy Kimmy's life instead of getting the meaningful, genuine life partnership with frequent in-person intimacy with her that I've always wanted. It's not like going to a different country to be with Kimmy is some kind of huge burden to me. There's some procedural, like paperwork, whatever stuff, because that's how the world works. But I was never going to restrict myself to women only from Canada because of that. There's nothing in Canada I'm particularly thrilled about or that's keeping me wanting to stay. A bunch of toxic blood relatives and ex-friends I've all completely cut out of my life long ago certainly aren't. My life would change considerably if I actually got the relationship I've always wanted and been after having with Kimmy, but it's not like I'm saying any changes that might be to whatever extent negative wouldn't be worth the positives. It's not like I see being with Kimmy as plunging my life into chaos. I can still do game development whether or not I'm with Kimmy. The hours I spend touching myself to Kimmy alone, wishing I wasn't left feeling so frustrated for being so attracted to her body. I could spend at least some of that time being intimate with her somehow, which is obviously something I'd greatly prefer. I mean, I really don't feel like I need to start listing or comparing every aspect of my life and how it might change or something just to demonstrate my point. My life is clearly what I'm saying it is, while Kimmy's off making excuses and flaunting how narcissistic she is.
I just struggled to find a safe space growing up and in my life. So I would want my relationship to be a safe space. And if it's anything less than that, I do not want it. Kind of thing. I feel like that's how it should be. Like, the thing is, like, I'm willing to give the other person a safe space as well, though. So it goes both ways. But anyway, until then, we're chilling. We're having fun. We're having a good time in life.
I'm extremely brutally deprived of being able to chill, have fun, or have a good time in life. It's been this way for me for the last several years, entirely because I've had to put practically all my time and energy into dealing with all this extreme abuse and these conspiracies to murder me, that people have extremely brutally abused my completely genuine feelings for Kimmy in order to inflict on me completely against my consent, wishes, and best interests. And Kimmy has clearly greatly benefited from my efforts, entirely at my expense. But I'm just some overly invested, creepy viewer stalker when I call her out for it? People say if you're a good person, people will be good back to you. And maybe that's true. But being a good person and being angelic are very different. And what people don't say is if you're really an angel, you'll just end up with demons trying to end your life and make you look like you deserved it. You want proof? Believe me, you'll get proof, whether you like it or not. Nobody is ever going to be able to even think of doing anything like this to me ever again. Anyone that believes I'm at all lying about anything or time will change how I feel about it all is goddamn hallucinating. If I'm really not going to get the results I've been after of direct communication from Kimmy and the relationship I want and deserve with her in a timely manner, I'm seriously just going to go down the extremely dark path and completely isolate myself from everyone and work on my own stuff and work towards destroying Kimmy's life and extremely severely antagonizing everyone that's facilitated my life becoming and remaining such an extremely brutal, relentless, hellish nightmare extremely unjustly for so long. There's literally nothing in the world that anyone can ever bait or entice me with to compromise my integrity, even in the slightest. The only thing I've ever really wanted all along from anyone is to be loved by Kimmy and have her latex-clad butt in my face and rubbing up against me in person for hours, daily, for eternity. But I'm clearly never getting anything even close to that with the way things are going. So I'm seriously just completely done with humanity, and this world will get a hellish nightmare of nightmares back for that which it inflicted upon me since I was born. I really don't care how stupid or out of touch or whatever else that sounds to anyone. Screw them all. And if that's all of humanity, then screw all of humanity. Genuinely. I'm seriously so done being so kind and respectful and genuine and just getting screwed over extremely badly constantly by everyone at all important in my life. I'm done giving people chances they endlessly abuse the hell out of. I'm done having hope it gets better when everything's just always been screaming at me that it won't my whole life. Again, I'm not saying anything here with any hidden messages or ulterior motives. I haven't sold out, nor am I trying at all to work towards selling out or compromising my integrity to any extent for any reason ever. There are seriously no hidden messages or ulterior motives here. I haven't been working towards trying to have my death faked. I haven't been doing anything that makes me at all benefit from people thinking I'm dead in any capacity. Ever. I'm very much alive and want everyone to believe I'm very much alive and have always wanted everyone to believe I'm alive. I'm not depressed and I'm certainly not suicidal. To say I'm disappointed and livid beyond words about me being left in the situation I'm in really feels like an understatement. While technically there is perhaps always the risk of me randomly dying any number of ways one might, I actively go out of my way to avoid putting myself in situations where accidents can occur or I can be generally in danger or provoking people to have a reason to want to harm or end my life. I tend to be quite observant and aware of my surroundings and keep an eye out for potential danger to avoid. And I have no health issues I'm aware of, so there's no good reason to believe any of my organs would randomly fail or something like that. So nobody has any particularly good reason to believe I'm randomly going to die. Not now, not a month or two from now, not ever. I literally only am extremely detrimented by people thinking I'm dead or trying to die or fake my death. This is happening entirely against my consent, wishes, and best interests. And I will never let people trying to push these false narratives do as they please. Believe me, I have absolutely no regrets about the position I've established and the maintenance of my integrity, and I benefit absolutely nothing I'd actually want or be willing to tolerate by letting people pretend I'm gone as if I want my integrity to be compromised or given a reason to be messed around with at all. I don't. I really don't. I really don't give a damn if you think this is some egotistical pride or if you think I have anger issues or something stupid like that. And it's even more laughable if you think I'm the type that has trouble asking for help because of what in reality is simply effectively you wishing I was a fraud, willing to compromise my integrity, and you wanting to hallucinate that my lack of want or willingness to be at all inauthentic is some kind of difficulty asking for help. You really don't know me. You don't understand what kind of person it takes to go through what I went through and how you'd be left feeling if you had to live the kind of life I've had to live. I've been through so many instances and different kinds of extremely brutal near-death experiences in real life that the reality is if I had even the slightest bit of real arrogant pride or anger issues, I'd literally be physically deceased right now, or in jail, or in a mental hospital. I wouldn't be at liberty to be releasing things for my podcast like I am, releasing the kinds of things I'm releasing, exposing the hell out of people, and applying immense pressure for people to recognize and actually do something adequate about the extremely negative consequences coming for them if they continue disrespecting and neglecting me as extremely severely as they have been. Refusing to basically beg people that have objectively demonstrably proven they're extremely disrespectful, toxic, arguably very much consciously and intentionally, deviously, extremely malicious attitudes towards me for help is not any kind of me having difficulty asking for help. It's just not being extremely pathetic and stupid. If anyone actually significant I'd ever even consider asking for any kind of help was serious about helping me in any meaningful way without devious ulterior motives to ultimately betray and abusively control me somehow, they would have directly contacted me and clearly offered, not expect me to pathetically go chase after them. I have a mailing list containing over 100 highly influential public figures directly receiving the official links to my releases and official transcripts of every release I make on this podcast. If out of all of those people, not even one has reached out to me, it's just remarkably stupid to think it's worth my time and energy to go chasing any of them or anyone else for anything. If you disagree, you're an idiot. Having genuine integrity, authenticity, self-respect, self-love, and confidence is not pride, or at least not some kind of unhealthy, active, ego-based pride that you might be inclined to think I'm showing evidence of with my position being and remaining what it is. Not being willing or desiring of selling my soul is not a negative quality. Not trying to see some kind of alternative positives in a situation that was fully consciously and intentionally crafted to only be purely detrimental to me, with me being who I really am, is not depression or anger issues or some other mental illness or objectively negative quality in me. And neither is being unwilling to consider delusions of what reality could be that people try to brainwash me with as anything other than what they really are. It's all simply clear perception of objective reality and further examples of my objectively quantifiable demonstration of my core value of refined pure bidirectional apprehension. And your refusal to acknowledge that for what it really is just comes off to me as jealousy and hatred I don't deserve and obviously don't want. Of course, you'll probably continue not to really care or do anything actually meaningful or adequate about it. But don't be surprised when you end up facing increasingly negative consequences for your extremely poor decisions in this regard. I couldn't have warned you any more clearly. There's only so much anyone can reasonably expect me to do before my heading down an extremely dark path is exceedingly not just justified but warranted and effectively necessary when faced with how exceedingly looking at humanity with even the slightest bit of warmth or faith would have only extremely painfully proven to be exceedingly grossly inadequate as an approach suitable to even simply survive, even remotely reasonably tolerably or fairly, if at all, long term for me. I've already been reduced to surviving several near-death experiences and multiple hitmen sent to try to eliminate me from real life, and I'm still to this day left eating out of trash cans and sleeping on the streets simply because I refuse to live my life extremely pathetically in submission to extremely disrespectful toxic psychopaths trying to extremely abusively control and literally end my life for their selfish gain. There's a very real limit to how much of this and for how long people can at all reasonably expect me to tolerate it before extreme and decisive retaliation is thoroughly appropriate. I've already been handling this to an extremely, exceedingly, literally inhuman extent. It's already extremely unreasonable for people to even be expecting me to have to do what I'm already doing. And yet people seem to just endlessly want to force me to do more and more to prove myself and still not get anything actually meaningful or worthwhile in return until it really does drive me crazy and destroy me. I know I don't have to force myself to just keep living this way and desperately hoping it'll somehow be worth it in the end if I don't just accept people clearly want and deserve me going down an extremely dark path I will destroy people's lives with because they chose to extremely brutally, fully consciously and intentionally disrespect and neglect and try to control me and deny me of an even remotely actually tolerable and enjoyable life to me unacceptably badly. It really perplexes and disturbs me when I try to contemplate on what people don't understand. How crazy what I'm achieving with this podcast already is. Every release I make on this podcast, it's the spiritual equivalent of, imagine you're driving a crappy little cheap car with absolutely nothing special about it and a reinforced heavy-duty large cargo truck with a huge bomb inside smashes into you in a head-on collision at 100 miles an hour and then the bomb in it detonates. 100% of people that don't have extensive quantum energy arts training to produce a reinforced energy shield on their body to protect themselves would end up thoroughly physically deceased with absolutely no possibility for resuscitation whatsoever. Quantum energy arts is a real thing, but that exact scenario is a metaphor here. As far as actual driving, I don't even have a driver's license, and I have no good reason to even enter a transportation vehicle of any kind in general the vast majority of the time, since I hardly travel distances I can't just walk around to. But imagine this podcast's YouTube channel with not even 10 subscribers and that has nothing inherently special about it is a crappy little cheap car and going up against multiple highly influential established public figures attacking me, especially combined with other insanely toxic people from my past or in general that want to see me fail with their smear campaigns and constant emotional dysregulation attacks. An overall existential assault towards me is that large cargo truck smashing into me and trying to explode me into tiny pieces beyond recognition so I never can move or do anything ever again. I walk out of that catastrophic accident of a situation without any permanent or long-lasting physical, mental, or spiritual damage done to me because of the power I have and objectively prove as such. And people act like it's an even remotely appropriate response to simply assume I'm lying and continue to disrespect and neglect me and basically pretend I don't exist or deserve any real or significant recognition. And if I get angry and express any hatred towards anyone for being such a piece of garbage for treating me that way, I'm suddenly a bad person and the problem and deserving of how I'm being treated. As if what I'm doing isn't a big deal just because I make it look easy. But I make it look easy because in reality I'm an extremely exceptional and powerful being that's extremely rare. But it's just too much for people's brains to comprehend, but I'm not a lying piece of garbage until it's too late and they're really doomed. I guess. I seriously don't owe anyone anything, and I certainly don't have to keep living this way. I really will be the worst nightmare of nightmares for all of you morons with influence on the world stage that continue to treat me this way. And not the nightmare that you actually want, that isn't even a nightmare, but rather what you always wanted to use me to get while trying to rob me of my soul by claiming it's a nightmare to you, as if I hurt you or you did me a favor somehow or something by allowing it or something. You're going to get an actual worst nightmare of your worst nightmares that very much isn't what you want or benefit from at all. Like what you're inflicting on me right now and have been for the past several years. Except you deserve it. Kimmy still hasn't contacted me. So I guess she's clearly decisively deciding on fully committing to admitting she's a massive piece of complete garbage whose life I can, should, and will ultimately completely destroy and make her regret ever being born, as she likely takes her own life in real life after being extremely brutally publicly humiliated and has her career and personal relationships destroyed and anything that brings her happiness or makes her life feel worth living stripped away from her. I seriously don't, never did, and never will have ulterior motives or enjoy this or want or need or owe anyone to continue giving chances to someone that just get me humiliated and denied and punish me for being a sincere, loving, mature person. I won't ever allow anyone to make me hate myself for being as wonderful as I am. And again, I'm making it extremely clear that me saying this is not at all compromising my integrity or going back on the position I've extremely clearly established with this podcast. I'm not dating anyone, I'm not looking, and I'm not keeping an open mind or heart about it. I'm not compromising my integrity at all. Ever. Just going down the extremely dark path and following through on my extremely dark threats, like I've said. I noticed Kimmy strangely recently decided to start watching the anime One Piece, and I want to reiterate that I am not and never have been trying to get Kimmy to watch any anime, and I'm not at all appeased by it or forced to shut up because of it, and I have no involvement in whatever the hell compelled her to decide that watching any anime is somehow a relevant or appropriate reaction in response to this conflict. I don't benefit from it in any way, shape, or form. Also, once again, if Kimmy doesn't live stream with camera for a prolonged period of time, I'm absolutely unconditionally going to assume it's because she's pregnant right now and she's trying to hide the pregnancy, which absolutely unconditionally doesn't change my position. It's just an absolutely unconditionally fully decisive commitment to pushing me down the extremely dark path, while Kimmy would be admitting full fault in things ending up that way and fully deserving of having her life extremely brutally thoroughly destroyed as she'd deserve in that case for being that way. As far as I'll ever be concerned, it's especially specifically because I was really so nightmarishly suppressed and sabotaged and hurt and put into extremely messed up, horrible nightmare of nightmare situations that I literally almost died in real life because of multiple times, entirely unjustly and obviously against my consent, wishes, and best interests, that Kimmy absolutely unconditionally must get an abortion if she's ever pregnant. If she at all doubts my sexual desire for her, let me prove it to her daily for hours in person then. And believe me, I will, and I'll enjoy it incomparably immensely. If she wants proof I never want children with anyone, and I'm not just saying that in a moment of anger or out of some revenge against her or something like that, then let me prove it to her, and let me prove how happily I will lovingly embrace being with her and being extremely extensively sexually intimate with her extremely frequently and tenderly, and enjoy her personally witnessing how overjoyed I am to indulge in intimacy with her that extensively while never having children with anyone ever for any reason. And let me prove to her how warm and loving I'll be to her in general, even not at times of sexual intimacy. She is the one that is choosing not to allow that. That's not on me. I've even repeatedly stated that I'm talking about private intimacy just between me and her, and not becoming some kind of adult sexual content creator. So it's not like I'm trying to force her to suddenly drastically alter or abandon her current public persona. I've given up years of my life to even just have a chance at a real, lasting, intimate life partnership with her, but she effectively completely dismisses it, lies extremely badly about it, and ignores me and messes around with stupid mind games and excuses instead of communicating with me properly and actually taking things seriously. But somehow, I'm the problem. Entirely regardless of how Kimmy or anyone else feels about me or anything else, I'm seriously, absolutely, unconditionally against Kimmy ever having children, and especially her seeing through a pregnancy if she's currently pregnant. I literally don't care if it's past 6 months and it's literally illegal to abort. Kimmy should still find a way and do it. I really don't care, even if she and or anyone else is devastated about it, or however else anyone feels about it. It's really that bad. I don't want Kimmy in jail either. Any potential pregnancy of hers should just be promptly aborted, absolutely unconditionally, no matter what, now and for the rest of her existence. It's not just about me not wanting to have to deal with a child being somehow in our lives. It's about what me ever at all being willing to validate any pregnancy of Kimmy's at all represents. If Kimmy's ever gotten or gets pregnant, it seriously should have never happened. It represents people's unbelievably extremely severe, unjust hatred towards me, to the point I've almost died multiple times in real life, and Kimmy felt justified in literally conspiring to murder me with her friends, and to this day putting me through such a nightmare that I've had to release something like this on my podcast. Me ever at all validating her being pregnant for any reason represents some kind of me being at fault or somehow deserving how unbelievably horribly I've been treated and not believed when I speak the truth about it all. That's genuinely, thoroughly, absolutely, unconditionally unacceptable to me. Seriously. There's no even remote room for any even slightly tolerable business relationship or friendship or any extent of positive connection between me and Kimmy at that point. It's literally just, I absolutely unconditionally must relentlessly make my utmost effort to ensure any potential children Kimmy's had or might have, along with Kimmy herself and anyone that ever got her pregnant or might get her pregnant in the future, absolutely unconditionally meet extremely brutal, horrible early demises in real life, literally no matter what it takes. Regardless of whether or not Kimmy's pregnant and or gets an abortion and or now goes a prolonged period without live streaming with camera on, since Kimmy seems to only want to prove extremely painfully clearly that she put me through such a hellish nightmare of nightmares, only to prove reality really always has been and always will be my worst nightmare of nightmares all along, it's time now I follow through, one day at a time, one step at a time, with bringing Kimmy's worst nightmare of nightmares to life and meticulously, thoroughly, absolutely destroy every aspect of her life and make her regret ever being born, as she meets a horrible early demise in real life. Since she really seems to publicly and privately only wants to prove extremely painfully clearly to me that she's genuinely the most demonic psychopath possible, and genuinely never really cared at all what I want, and doesn't even really care at all what I deserve, so she certainly doesn't deserve me to care at all what she wants either. But I most certainly will give her the hellish nightmare of her worst nightmares that she deserves for what she's done to me. Because that's the kind of person I am, and I don't feel sorry or ashamed for it one bit. Nor should I. For those morons that think I'm somehow confused and feel I need more control over the situation or something, I'm well aware I already have leverage, massive leverage. And nobody has any real leverage on me. Nobody. I'm saying this extremely clearly. Anyone that claims otherwise is a goddamn liar. I don't have to gather more information or wait for any reason. The only reason Kimmy's life wouldn't get absolutely destroyed shortly after me releasing this is because people are actively, fully consciously, and intentionally suppressing and sabotaging me entirely against my consent, wishes, and best interests. Unless Kimmy is extremely seriously going to promptly, directly contact me and pursue the kind of connection I've been saying I want with her, while herself agreeing to help me and getting more attention while being in a position where it makes sense for me to feel it's appropriate to paint her in a good light instead of the exceedingly absolutely horrid light that she deserves to be painted in currently with her current attitude and behavior towards me. If I wanted to do whatever ulterior motive garbage things people have been lying that I supposedly want, I would have just let people lie about the reality of my life and let Kimmy and Celine commit to some kind of official relationship and then forced my way to professional success using what I knew about how they achieved that as leverage. I didn't fully consciously and intentionally speak up how I did to stop that just in time out of stupidity. I'm not confused or indecisive at all. I just actually mean everything I've been saying. People try to abuse the fact that they've been pushing me towards an extremely destructive path completely carelessly all along with their extremely destructive attitudes and behaviors towards me, and then try to lie to make it seem like I was somehow the problem and the one with the destructive attitude or behavior, so they can make it seem like either I'm disingenuously saying it with ulterior motives, or I'm just an evil person that wanted to be destructive all along. If Kimmy really cared and wasn't a massive piece of garbage, she'd promptly comply and speak to me directly and explain what the hell is going on and pursue the relationship with me that she already should have been. Not continue to ignore me and mess around with watching anime or whatever the hell else while I'm clearly being disrespected and neglected and slandered extremely badly as she's just waiting to try to inflict another narcissistic abuse cycle on me where she's hallucinating I'm going to stay silent at a critical time, where she's going to try to massively misrepresent me and act like I'm moving on or literally dead, and then try to steamroll over my soul as she tries to proceed with some kind of romantic and or sexual relationship with Celine or someone else. If people are going to continue to massively disrespect and neglect me and facilitate this unbelievably abusive toxicity that's happening entirely against my consent, wishes, and best interests, and then just try to force me into the same thing, whether they're trying to do this garbage to me in a day, or a week, or a month and a half, or a year, or however long they think, I won't ever let it happen. So when I stand up for myself next time, I'm not going to be even remotely hopeful that it can go anywhere positive. I'll just find a way to make sure I get attention and destroy Kimmy's life and Celine's life and whoever else is such an unbelievably unacceptable piece of garbage doing this to me. Believe me, I'll find a way. And I'll bring all of your worst nightmares of nightmares into reality. I haven't been building my life at all to go in a different direction from my integrity to any extent. Any different direction is such a massive compromise of my integrity and something I've so exceedingly not been working toward whatsoever that it absolutely unconditionally would never be even remotely actually pleasant, rewarding, or fulfilling to me in any actually tolerable way. It'd effectively be nosediving into self-destruction, which I've repeatedly stated I won't ever tolerate doing to myself. I really don't say it just because it sounds good. It's no mystery to me that people are trying extremely hard to force me into giving attention to or pursuing other people I don't want and never wanted and will never want. I'm not even going to consider mentioning anyone else, because clearly people have been going to great lengths to perpetuate extremely serious false narratives about me that try to make me seem secretly or disingenuously obsessed with people behind the scenes, and most likely make me look like I'm intentionally trying to hurt people or being a massive piece of trash in general in the process. People are clearly even now trying to desperately rely on me being clearly under so much stress and pressure and so hurt and disappointed and angry and sad that I start sabotaging myself. And since I genuinely haven't been working towards any ulterior motives and genuinely nobody at all has been working in my favor, allowing myself to get pushed in the direction of giving certain people attention that people are trying to force me to give attention to just absolutely unconditionally nosedives into self-destruction as everyone has been trying to benefit at my expense with complete disregard for the negative impact it has on my life. I never wanted to be alone. But from childhood, I've never been able to really depend on anyone I was supposed to in my life. I've never had anyone I could feel emotionally safe with. I've just had extremely brutal trauma one after the next since I was a child. I don't see healing as starting to be willing to depend on people in ways I feel I shouldn't and trying to force myself to tolerate the extreme, intolerable anxiety and stress that causes me. No matter how much I didn't want to be alone, I've had to live a life where I had to constantly prepare to do everything on my own. I'm seriously ready and willing to have to go down an extremely dark path if people really are this horrible, psychopathic pieces of absolute garbage that they're going to push me and seriously make it abundantly, extremely painfully, publicly and privately evident to me that exposing and destroying people's lives is the only way I have to go to live a life I can ever find even remotely actually tolerable. I haven't been warning anyone of what my releases will contain, or when they'll be coming out, or if they're even happening at all. And I certainly haven't been seeking approval or validation from anyone on what to say, or if it's okay for me to say what I'm saying and fully authentically be myself. This is very much intentional and won't be changing. I want it extremely thoroughly understood that any source of information anyone has that indicated this release wouldn't happen or wouldn't be what it is a highly unreliable source of information when it comes to information about me. Nobody except me knows what I've been doing or what I'll do next. I want to further solidify the notion that nobody is at all collaborating with me or helping me or getting insider info from me. Nobody is on any kind of good terms with me. I have no friends, no romantic relationship. I've cut everyone from my past out of my life completely, including blood relatives, and I have no want, need, or intent to disclose any details about my life anywhere else besides this podcast. I have officially listed all the ways to contact me on my podcast's YouTube channel. I'm at The Dark Red Pill on YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Twitch, and Discord. Until very recently that I actually just changed my @ on Twitter, or X if you call it that. The user that was previously using the @ on that platform was not me. I have no idea who it was, but it was not me or someone I associate with in any capacity or endorse or support or was consenting to or benefiting in any way, shape, or form from the existence of the account of. I was actually going to mention on this release that the account isn't me, but I noticed that for reasons I'm entirely unaware of, it was either deleted or has changed its @ to something I'm entirely unaware of. So I quickly grabbed the @ for myself by changing the @ of my main Twitter account I've had for many years now. I'm pretty sure that account was criminally impersonating me. I don't know how long it was happening for, but I do know that whoever was doing it was doing so knowing fully consciously and intentionally that they are doing it entirely against my consent, wishes, and best interests. I do not endorse, encourage, support, or have any involvement with anything that account did or whoever was managing it. The reason they ever even got the @ is because I simply didn't think to take it on most platforms for a long time. And again, Since nobody was communicating anything to me properly or clearly, I didn't know people were doing blatant impersonating garbage like that, even in public. But clearly, people have been lying about me so badly, they took it as an opportunity to go behind my back and do who knows what. I don't list my phone number publicly, but I've given it to my mailing list before. It doesn't really matter since I've never preferred to communicate that way anyways. Do not call me on hidden numbers. Do not text me from random numbers pretending to be a random person or trying to offer me a job or something. Direct communication transparently means admitting who you are and clearly proving your identity. And nobody is actually trying to contact me even remotely properly like that. I'm not messing around. Come correct or don't bother. I don't have a boss. I don't have management. Like I've said before in this podcast, I don't authorize anyone to act on behalf of me or to represent me in any manner of communication for any reason. The only way to communicate with me is directly through official means that are clearly me. Anyone claiming otherwise is a liar. I never contact anyone through any kind of shady means or alt accounts or anything like that. If you're getting communication from anyone that appears to be me or somehow claims to represent me or something like that, but isn't from any source I've officially listed on my podcast's YouTube channel, you should assume it's not me or anyone associated with me, and you should assume they're acting entirely against my consent, wishes, and best interests. The only thing besides my phone number that I haven't listed publicly is my personal Gmail account, but the only thing I ever send from that anymore is exact copy and pastes from the official transcript documents for my releases on this podcast to my only mailing list. I don't have Kimmy blocked on anything. It's extremely easy for her to clearly communicate with me if she really wanted to. She's literally just refusing to communicate directly with me properly at all. I've been completely open to communicating with her this whole time, so if she's claiming or trying to act like I'm being at all disingenuous in the chances I've given her, understand she is lying. I've never blocked her on anything, and it's never going to change my position either if she ever acts like I have. People are acting like I don't want or deserve more attention, as if I have some deal with someone or something I'm not fulfilling, or as if I've somehow actually done something evil to someone to deserve people constantly trying so extremely hard to leave my life completely in shambles in every possible way. As if I have some kind of obligation I owe someone to fulfill before I deserve more attention. Or as if I'm stupid or pathetic or fake in standing up for myself, and I should just shut up and stop being so obnoxious and delusional in acting like who I really am and deserve to express myself as. All wrong. So ridiculously wrong. And it's not even remotely funny. It's never been even remotely funny to me. Are you really sure you want to treat me this way? Are you all really that stupid and toxic? You should know, even if you really are, it's still never going to change my position. I know enough about Kimmy to be able to try to understand why she would lie so much about me. She's extremely insecure and has been hurt a lot by people she's dated in the past, and she also has trauma from childhood with attachment issues. She moved around a lot and had to get used to being emotionally distant from people and never feeling like she can let herself get comfortable with the idea of someone staying in her life long term. And the way she's described her childhood in the past indicates neither of her parents were exactly the greatest role model for having healthy emotional attachment to someone. But no amount of understanding why she's so messed up mentally would ever make losing the kind of connection with her that I've always wanted become tolerable. I'm certainly not, never have been, and never will be fighting just to understand why I've had such a nightmare because of her extreme mental illness. Finally, for anyone confused, The scumbags I'm antagonizing when I've been saying Kimmy's associates are not only every public figure on my mailing list, but also everyone that's considered even as part of the extended realm of the offline TV and Friends umbrella, and also very possibly people that even just significantly associate with any of those people and aren't even included in that classification. If you all want to see me really become your worst nightmare of nightmares so badly, believe me, that's what you're really going to get.